A crisp autumn morning in downtown Chicago, the kind where the wind cuts through your jacket and the city hums with purpose. The Grand Meridian Hotel towers over the skyline, its glass facade gleaming under the pale sunlight. Inside, the grand ballroom is buzzing. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over tables draped in white linen, where conference attendees, suits, ties, and polished shoes mingle over coffee and croissants. It's the annual Leadership Summit, a high-profile event for corporate executives, policymakers, and thought leaders. The air smells of ambition money and just a hint of cologne. At the edge of this polished scene stands Marcus Tate, a tall black man in his early 30s, broad-shouldered with a quiet intensity in his eyes. He's dressed simply: a navy blazer, a white shirt, and dark slacks. Nothing flashy but clean, deliberate. He's standing near the entrance holding a leather portfolio, scanning the room like someone who's been here before, but knows he's not quite welcome. His presence doesn't draw attention, not yet. To the bustling crowd, he's invisible, just another face in the background. Enter Preston Caldwell, the head of security for the event. Preston's the kind of guy who wears his authority like a badge, his walkie-talkie crackling with self-importance. He's white mid-40s with a buzz cut and a smirk that says he's seen it all. He spots Marcus lingering near the entrance and narrows his eyes. To Preston, Marcus doesn't fit. He's not schmoozing with the VIPs, not flashing a name tag with a fancy title. In Preston's mind, Marcus is out of place, maybe a janitor who wandered into the wrong room, maybe someone who slipped past the front desk. Preston strides over his boots, clicking on the marble floor. "Excuse me," he says, his voice sharp, cutting through the hum of conversation. "You're not supposed to be here." The words land like a slap, and a few heads turn. Marcus looks up, his expression calm but guarded. "I'm exactly where I need to be," he says. His voice low, measured like he's holding back a storm. Preston scoffs, folding his arms. "This is a private event, buddy. Staff entrance is downstairs." The word buddy drips with condescension, and the room feels smaller now, the air heavier. A woman in a pantsuit nearby glances over her lips, pursed, but she says nothing. Marcus doesn't flinch. He tilts his head slightly as if sizing Preston up. "I'm not staff," he says, his tone still even, but there's an edge to it. A warning Preston doesn't catch. "Look, I don't have time for this," Preston snaps. Stepping closer, his voice louder, now drawing more eyes. "You need to leave, or I'm calling backup." The threat hangs in the air, and the room starts to quiet. Marcus's jaw tightens, but he doesn't move. He's not loud, not aggressive, but there's something in his stillness that unsettles Preston. It's not fear, it's certainty. The situation escalates faster than it should. Preston grabs Marcus's arm, not hard, but enough to make a point. "Let's go," he says, pulling Marcus toward the exit. The crowd parts, some whispering, others staring. Marcus doesn't resist, but he doesn't comply either. He walks with Preston, his steps deliberate, his portfolio still clutched in one hand. "You're making a mistake," Marcus says, his voice calm but heavy like a judge delivering a verdict. Preston laughs, a short, bitter sound. "Yeah, I've heard that one before." "Keep moving." They're almost at the door now, and the attendees are watching, some with discomfort, others with indifference. A young black woman in the crowd, maybe an intern, grips her coffee cup tighter, her eyes locked on Marcus. She knows this script too well, the assumptions, the dismissal, the casual cruelty of being seen as less. But here's where it gets interesting. Marcus isn't rattled. He's not pleading or explaining himself. There's a quiet power in the way he carries himself, a hint that he's more than he seems. As Preston shoves him toward the exit, Marcus glances at his watch, a sleek, understated piece that doesn't scream wealth, but whispers it. He mutters something under his breath, too low for Preston to hear, but it sounds like they'll figure it out soon enough. The doors swing open, and Preston's about to push Marcus out when a woman's voice cuts through the tension. "What's going on here?" It's Dr. Elaine Carter, the conference organizer, a no-nonsense woman in her 50s with a clipboard and a glare that could stop traffic. Preston freezes, his hand still on Marcus's arm. "This guy doesn't belong here," Preston says, but there's a flicker of doubt in his voice now. Dr. Carter looks at Marcus, then at Preston, then back at Marcus. Her eyes narrow, and for a moment, it feels like the whole room is holding its breath. "Is that so?" she says, her tone icy. Marcus meets her gaze, and there's a spark of recognition between them, subtle but unmistakable. The scene freezes here with Marcus standing tall, Preston's hand still on his arm, and Dr. Carter's question hanging in the air. "You're angry, aren't you? You're wondering how this could happen, how someone could be judged so quickly, so wrongly. But there's more to this story. Something big is coming, and it's going to turn this moment upside down. Stick with me, because Marcus isn't who Preston thinks he is, and the truth is about to hit like a freight train." We're back in the Grand Meridian's ballroom, and the tension is thick enough to choke on. Marcus Tate stands just inside the doorway, Preston's hand still gripping his arm, like he's some kind of trespasser. Dr. Elaine Carter, the conference organizer, is staring at them, both her clipboard clutched like a weapon. The crowd is watching now, a mix of curiosity and discomfort rippling through the room. You can feel it, the kind of moment where something's about to break, but you don't know what. Preston doubles down. This guy was loitering. He says, his voice louder now, performative, like he's trying to justify himself to the crowd. No badge, no invitation, just standing around like he owns the place. He jerks his head toward Marcus, who hasn't said a word since Dr. Carter stepped in. Marcus's face is unreadable, but his eyes are sharp, taking in every detail. Preston's clenched jaw, the crowd's murmurs, the way Dr. Carter's fingers tighten around her clipboard. Loitering, Marcus repeats, his voice low, almost amused. It's the kind of tone that makes you lean in, like he's holding a secret and daring you to figure it out. He shifts his weight, and for the first time, you notice the way he stands. Confident, grounded, like a man who's faced worse than this and come out on top. Preston doesn't see it. He's too busy playing the tough guy, his chest puffed out, his walkie-talkie crackling as he calls for backup. "Let's take this outside," Preston says, pulling Marcus again. But Marcus doesn't budge this time. He plants his feet, and the subtle shift in his posture makes Preston falter. "I'm not going anywhere," Marcus says, his voice still calm, but now carrying a weight that makes the room feel smaller. The crowd is fully invested now, phones slipping out of pockets, recording the drama. Dr. Carter steps forward, her heels clicking with authority. "Preston, let go of him," she says, her voice cutting through the noise like a blade. Preston hesitates, his grip loosening, but not releasing. "Ma'am, I'm just doing my job," he says. But there's a crack in his confidence, a flicker of uncertainty. He's starting to sense that something's off, but his pride won't let him back down. Marcus, meanwhile, is a study in restraint. He could escalate this raise, his voice pull away, make a scene, but he doesn't. Instead, he reaches into his blazer pocket and pulls out a slim card, not a badge, but something official-looking with embossed lettering that catches the light. He holds it between two fingers, not offering it to Preston, but letting it sit there, a quiet challenge. "You might want to take a look at this," he says, his tone almost too polite. Preston snatches the card, glancing at it dismissively. His face doesn't change, but his eyes linger a second too long. He hands it back, muttering, "Doesn't prove anything." But you can tell he's rattled. The card isn't some cheap business card. It's heavy professional, the kind of thing you don't get at a corner print shop. The crowd notices too. A man in a suit nearby whispers to his colleague, "Who is this guy?" The situation spirals further. Preston, sensing the crowd's attention shifting, gets louder. "I don't care what's on your card," he says, stepping into Marcus's space. "You're not on the list, and you're not staying." He's practically shouting now, his face red, his authority slipping through his fingers like sand. Marcus doesn't blink. He tilts his head, a small smile playing at the corner of his mouth. "You sure about that?" he asks. And it's not a question, it's a warning. Dr. Carter's had enough. Preston, step back, she says, her voice like steel. She turns to Marcus, her expression softening just a fraction. "Mr. Tate, I apologize for the misunderstanding. Can you confirm your role here?" The way she says Mr. Tate carries weight, like she knows something the rest of us don't. The crowd leans in, sensing the shift. Preston's face twitches, his certainty crumbling. Marcus doesn't answer right away. He adjusts his blazer, smooths a wrinkle, and takes a slow, deliberate breath. "I'm here to speak," he says simply. But the way he says it, like it's the most obvious thing in the world, makes the room go quiet. Speak at the Leadership Summit. The same summit where Fortune 500 CEOs and senators are sharing the stage. The crowd murmurs, and Preston's face goes from red to pale. But Preston's not done digging his hole. "Speak?" He scoffs, his voice dripping with disbelief. You're here to give the keynote?" The sarcasm is thick, but there's a nervous edge to it now. He's laughing, but it's forced, and the crowd isn't laughing with him. Marcus doesn't respond. He just looks at Preston, his gaze steady, unyielding, like a man who's already won, but is letting his opponent figure it out the hard way. Dr. Carter steps between them, her clipboard now tucked under her arm. "Preston, you're dismissed," she says, her tone final. Preston opens his mouth to argue, but the look in her eyes shuts him down. He lets go of Marcus's arm, stepping back. His face a mix of anger and confusion. The crowd is buzzing now, phones still recording whispers growing louder. Marcus straightens his blazer again, his movements calm, deliberate. He glances at Dr. Carter, gives her a small nod, and then looks back at Preston. "You should stick around," he says, his voice low, but carrying across the room. "You might learn something." The words land like a punch, and Preston's face twists with something between rage and fear. We're teetering on the edge now, and you can feel it. Who is Marcus Tate? Why is Dr. Carter treating him like he's someone important? And why is Preston starting to look like a man who's just realized he's made the biggest mistake of his career? Hold tight, because the truth is about to come out, and it's going to flip this whole scene on its head. The Grand Meridian's ballroom is a pressure cooker now. The crowd is buzzing, phones still out, capturing every second of this unfolding drama. Marcus Tate stands tall, his navy blazer slightly wrinkled from Preston's grip, but his composure is unshakable. Preston, the security chief, is starting to sweat, his bravado crumbling under the weight of Dr. Elaine Carter's icy stare. She's just dismissed him, but he's still standing there, caught between defiance and doubt. The air is electric, and everyone knows something big is coming. Dr. Carter turns to the crowd, her voice clear and commanding. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the disruption," she says, her tone professional, but laced with an edge of reproach. "It seems there's been a misunderstanding. Allow me to clarify." She pauses, letting the tension build, then gestures toward Marcus. "This is Marcus Tate, our keynote speaker for today's summit." The room gasps. A collective ripple of shock and disbelief spreads through the crowd. Keynote speaker, the man Preston just tried to throw out. The same man he assumed was a janitor or a gatecrasher. Whispers turn to murmurs, and Preston's face goes ghost white. He opens his mouth, but no words come out. Marcus, meanwhile, doesn't react. He just stands there, his portfolio still in hand, his expression calm, but with a flicker of something else, satisfaction maybe. Or the quiet confidence of someone who's been underestimated before and knows how this story ends. Dr. Carter continues, her voice rising with authority. "Mr. Tate is the founder and CEO of Horizon Innovations, a company revolutionizing sustainable technology across the globe. He's a Rhodes Scholar, a Forbes 30 Under 30 honoree, and one of the most respected voices in leadership today. We're honored to have him here." The crowd erupts in applause, but it's not just polite clapping. It's the kind of applause that comes with realization, with respect, with a little bit of shame for those who stood by and watched. The young black woman from earlier, the one gripping her coffee cup, is smiling now, her eyes shining with pride. Others in the crowd exchange glances, some embarrassed, others nodding like they knew it all along. Preston, though, is frozen. His walkie-talkie is silent now, his authority stripped away in front of everyone. He tries to speak, stumbling over his words. I didn't know," he says, his voice barely above a whisper. Marcus looks at him, not with anger, but with something worse, pity. "You didn't ask," Marcus says, his voice steady, cutting through the noise like a blade. The power dynamic has flipped, and you can feel it in the room. Preston, who was so sure of his control, is now the one out of place. Marcus, the man he tried to humiliate, is the one everyone's looking at now. Dr. Carter steps forward, her clipboard back in hand. "Mr. Tate, if you're ready, we'd like to begin your session," she says, her tone warm but professional. Marcus nods, adjusting his blazer one last time. He steps past Preston, not sparing him another glance, and walks toward the stage. The crowd parts for him, their eyes following his every move. He's not just a man anymore, he's a presence, a force, someone who commands respect without demanding it. As he ascends the steps to the stage, the lights dim and a spotlight finds him. He sets his portfolio on the podium, takes a deep breath, and looks out at the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen," he begins, his voice rich and resonant, filling the room. "Today, we're going to talk about leadership, not just in boardrooms, but in life. About seeing people for who they are, not what you assume them to be." The crowd is silent, hanging on his every word. You can feel the weight of his message, the way it lands on everyone, especially Preston, who's still standing near the door, looking like he wants to disappear. Marcus's speech is electric, weaving together stories of his journey growing up in a neighborhood where opportunities were scarce, defying expectations, building a company that's changing the world. He doesn't mention the incident with Preston, but he doesn't need to. The subtext is clear this moment. This injustice is part of a larger story, one that too many Black men know by heart. As he speaks, the crowd is captivated. Some are taking notes, others are nodding. A few are wiping tears from their eyes. Marcus isn't just delivering a speech, he's delivering a reckoning. And Preston. He's still there watching from the sidelines, his face a mix of shame and realization. The man he tried to throw out is now the center of the room, and there's no coming back from that. This is the moment you've been waiting for, the truth revealed. The tables turned. But it's not over yet. There's still one more act to this story, and it's going to hit harder than you expect. What happens to Preston? What does justice look like in a moment like this? And what does Marcus's victory mean for the rest of us? Stay with me, because the final chapter is coming, and it's going to leave you thinking long after the screen goes dark. We're still in the Grand Meridian's ballroom, but the energy has shifted. Marcus Tate is at the podium, his keynote speech in full swing, his voice carrying the weight of experience, wisdom, and undeniable authority. The crowd is spellbound, hanging on his every word as he talks about leadership resilience and the power of seeing people for who they truly are. The chandeliers above seem to glow brighter, the room feels warmer. And for a moment, it's like Marcus is speaking directly to each person in the audience, including you. Preston Caldwell, the security chief who tried to throw Marcus out, is still lingering near the door. His walkie-talkie is silent now, his posture slumped. The crowd's applause for Marcus feels like a spotlight on his mistake, and he knows it. He's not the center of this story anymore, but his actions have consequences, and they're about to catch up with him. As Marcus wraps up his speech, he pauses, his eyes scanning the room. Before I close, he says, his voice softening, but no less powerful. "I want to say something to those who feel invisible, to those who've been judged, dismissed, or underestimated because of how they look or where they come from. You are enough. Your presence is enough. And no one gets to take that away from you." The crowd erupts in applause, some standing, others cheering. The young Black woman from earlier is on her feet, clapping fiercely, her eyes wet with emotion. Marcus steps down from the stage, and Dr. Carter meets him at the bottom of the steps. "That was extraordinary," she says, shaking his hand. But her expression shifts as she glances toward Preston, who's trying to blend into the background. "We need to address what happened," she says, her voice low but firm. Marcus nods, not with anger, but with a quiet resolve. "I trust you'll handle it," he says, and walks away, his work here done. Dr. Carter doesn't waste time. She calls Preston over, her voice sharp enough to cut through the post-speech chatter. "We need to talk," she says, leading him to a quiet corner of the ballroom. The crowd is starting to disperse, but a few linger, sensing that something else is about to happen. Preston's face is a mask of dread as he follows her, his earlier bravado gone. In the corner, Dr. Carter doesn't hold back. "Your actions today were unacceptable," she says, her voice steady but laced with disappointment. "You made assumptions based on nothing but prejudice, And you humiliated a man who was our honored guest. That's not just a mistake, it's a failure of character. Preston tries to speak, but she cuts him off. You're suspended effective immediately. And you'll be required to complete sensitivity training before you return, if you return. Preston's shoulders sag, his face a mix of shame and defensiveness. I was just doing my job, he mutters, but the excuse sounds hollow even to him. Dr. Carter shakes her head. Your job is to protect, not to judge. You failed today, and you'll have to live with that. She turns away, leaving him standing alone, the weight of his actions settling over him like a cloud. The camera lingers on Preston for a moment, his expression a mix of regret and realization. Then it shifts to Marcus, who's now surrounded by attendees, shaking hands, accepting compliments, his presence commanding respect without effort. He's not gloating, he doesn't need to. His victory is in his existence, in his refusal to be diminished. As the scene fades, a voiceover, Marcus's voice comes in warm and reflective. This isn't just my story, he says. It's the story of every person who's been judged before they could speak, dismissed, before they could shine. But here's the truth. No one gets to define your worth. Not a security guard, not a system, not a society. You define it. And when you do, the world has no choice but to listen. The screen darkens and text appears. Don't judge a book by its cover. See the person, not the assumption. The video ends with a call to action. Subscribe for more stories of truth, justice, and resilience. Share this if it moved you. Let's change the narrative together. This is the moment you've been waiting for, justice served not with vengeance, but with accountability. Marcus didn't need to raise his voice or throw a punch. He won by being himself, by standing tall in the face of ignorance. And Preston. He's learned a lesson he'll never forget. But the real question is, what will you take from this? Because this story isn't just about Marcus, it's about all of us and the world we choose to build.